Thanks. It's great doing cleanup because what General Olson basically did a great job of kind of laying down where are we at today, where are our needs, not just in terms of our national security, but economic opportunities and how we're trying to implement policy from the national level. And then Robbie just kind of took it up a notch to the kind of the Department of the Air Force research laboratory level and said, hey, here's how we're attacking the future. My favorite slide in your deck was really in the old way, the hybrid way, and the heterogeneous way, because what you're doing is the hybrid architecture. I'm convinced that the hybrid architecture is going to be an environment where there's more winners than losers, and that's really probably the economic prize that's really going to kick off the in-space economy, at least from a digital infrastructure standpoint. And then all the physical infrastructure goes in, enables everything that the companies in this room know and care about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it just a notch further up, and just from a departmental standpoint, share some thoughts. Now, one thing I'm going to clarify, I'm going to talk a little bit about the rules of engagement for the next 2 days. First, this is our 5th year, as Casey mentioned. It's our 5th year of doing the State of Space Industrial Base workshop, and with emphasis on work, because it is a lot of work, and you're going to participate in it as we do our breakout sessions. And what the goal is that we produce a report, and that report is really your voice. We really emphasize that, and we try to put some framework in, but the most important thing that we get is we get the feedback from you, from industry, on where are your pain points, where's the discontinuities, what do we need in order to accelerate and compete, and in our vernacular, win the new space race, or another way of saying that is secure the space future that is most desirable for us as a nation, as a human species. These are all relevant questions. So things we've done different this year. We did our roadshow. So we've last year we did this our main conference, but we did a workshop for launch at Cape Canaveral. This year we did a workshop up in Seattle, or breakout up in Seattle, for advanced energy and propulsion, and also for hybrid space architecture Robbie was talking about. We have 2 other workshops to go. First time we're going to do a workshop in at the end of this month for global partnerships. So we're gonna do what we're doing with you, with our spacefaring allies and partners, which will be really interesting, because we're going to get all of them in a room, close the door, Chatham House rules, and say, give us your feedback. So and we need to do that, because we need to have a really good understanding of where we're hitting notes in key, and where we need to do a little tune-up. Okay, so some other changes, I think, and of course, we've been our long-standing partnership since day one. It was AFRL that really came to us and said, we should do this, right? And actually, the first year we tackled, the topic of foreign ownership, control, and influence, and really did a deep dive on what needed to happen there, and it shaped policy. And it's a much better environment today, 5 years later, than it was back then. And that's something we have to be vigilant about. But I think in the future, we're going to try to have other labs, other parts of the innovation ecosystem participate in as well as our allies and partners. Because one thing is, commercial is it's not the exclusive solution, but it's a great solution for tackling a lot of problems today. So the theme of this year's conference is building enduring advantages for economic prosperity and collective security. So what does that mean? So, well, the National Defense Strategy, which came out last year, building enduring advantages is one of the key principles, one of the key tenets in that plan. And it's not just doing a lot of development and technology, but it's really capitalizing and growing our commercial means so that we have both the production capacity and the talent in place to surge and meet emergent needs for both conflict, but also to promote and retain our leadership from a economic or from commerce standpoint. So as you go into these working group breakouts today, it's going to be very important from our standpoint that you bring your ideas about what do we need to be doing as a collective ecosystem for space to help contribute to building those enduring advantages, not just home but abroad. Some other things I think is really important. So we have I've taken a lot of questions, especially since over the past year with the Ukraine situation, and about the role of commercial in conflict, and really more specifically the role of commercial in war. And one of the things that I think is important for us to understand is our nation is always in we're in a continuum of conflict, right? It's just what intensity is it? Are we, there's always an attack surface. Go to U.S. Cyber Command and they'll tell you that we're under attack every day. All of you are competing globally in an economic sphere. You're competing daily. And so what we always use commercial technology, not exclusively. The key thing about commercial technology is that we have to have a commercial nexus. When we don't have a commercial nexus, what do? We go to our labs and our defense industrial base, and we go, we need something. We design it, we create it, we field it, and sometimes, not always, it spurs other economic activities. So sometimes the Department of Defense is a first mover, GPS, right? Robbie could probably rattle off 20 others, but we all know what we're talking about. In space, not always, but in space today, the department's trying to be more of a fast follower, right? And we're a fast follower on proliferated LEO constellations, right? And what does it mean to be a fast follower? Well, that means that we care about being tied to the current state of technology. We're not, and to do that, we can't design requirements, because requirements for bespoke solutions we have to be very, very careful with what we do. And the reason why is because we're going to execute a lot of our nation's wealth to go do something like a sixth generation fighter or and some of these other things. But when we do commercial, especially in space, where so many things are available as products and services, especially services, then it's really our buying power. And we are working at the national level to figure out how to free up more money in the budget through our planning, programming, budget execution. There's a lot of committees focused on that right now to make sure that we have the means to execute quickly and go after commercial opportunities. And that is a key focus in the Department of Defense right now. DIU, at the beginning of this month, we moved out of the research and engineering enterprise and back directly under the Secretary of Defense. We still have a toe in R&E for administrative and other things, but the reason why is it comes down to that execution, that implementation piece. Are we as a nation leveraging the commercial capability and capacity of the nation for the whole sphere of things that we need to do for our national security? And from the administration, our leadership is like, well, we could do a better job. and it's not to say that we're not. I think we're doing really, really well on research and development. But what we're not doing so well on is what innovation. And I'm going to clarify innovation from invention. So when we think about invention, I think about DARPA, right? It's you go out and you create a new capability or fact, and it's a very S&T focused activity. On innovation is really how we take those capabilities and fill them right into something that we can use. And for us, that's how we transition capabilities in the hands of the warfighter from a military standpoint. But it's also how we put products on the shelf at Best Buy, or or how we do other things. To do innovation really well, we have to have more focus on it, and that focus needs to factor two things. One is the commercial viability of what it is. Is there a market demand and a sustainable market? And really, what's the competition look like, right? So those are really key things, because we are when we started DIUX in 2015 with the idea that we were going to be doing this commercial stuff. We don't, it's not our job to adversely influence or impact the market space. What we needed, the heavy lift for us, is to convince ourselves that not only are the solutions that you work on technically feasible, but they need to be commercially viable. And then we're off to races. Well, that means that we have to, I'm looking at you, Bruce, that means we have to focus on the economics. And we need Robbie is, I don't even know how many degrees you have, but, it's a great thing about Robbie is he's been doing this long enough to understand that economics is a big part of the calculus he brings to his mission. And we need to do that up and down our government enterprise. So when we look at things, we need to look at, hey, if we build something like the hybrid architecture, how do we monetize it? How do we commoditize it? How do we make sure that every dollar we put into space, that it yields some economic benefit? And that's there. And I tell you, this is a wickedly hard problem. It's just within the Department of Defense, our services are buying things based on their perceived needs and requirements. But the combatant commanders are like, I need to be prepared to fight tonight, and their needs are quite different. And so, and many of you in the room get caught in the middle. We have an FY24, thanks to the great work of the Biden administration, we have in Congress, we have $140 billion research and development test and evaluation budget DoD wide. 1% of that money, about 1.4 billion, is about what we put into the small business innovative research ecosystem, which is really a great means for discovery of commercial talent and giving a lot of people who would not otherwise have some exposure to the Department of Defense and our national security mission, which is great. But what we can't tell you is very hard to say, well, how much money are we really spending on that innovation piece, that transitioning technology, that bridging of the valley to death, the putting capabilities that have come out of the S&T ecosystem, come out of the commercial sector, and putting them onto meaningful contracts that where the marketplace responds favorably. And right now, if you say, well, how do we do that? We do it through crisis management. So we have a lot of commercial technology that is being used to assist our friends in Eastern Europe, specifically Ukraine, and it's great. And a lot of it is remote sensing, commercial remote sensing, and because of that, there's some meaningful contracts have been written in that area by our good friends at the commercial SPO at the National Reconnaissance Office. But we need to scale that up. If I had one uh, dream, if there's one thing I would love to see us do, NASA does a great job when they recognize the commercial potential of rolling in with some significant money into their public-private partnerships, and then saying, well, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to use a commercial capability. And we can't do that with everything on the national security side, but we can have a balanced portfolio of how we do that. And that needs to be something that we need to look at and how you do it. Because if we actually go through that continuum of conflict, if we actually do have war, we have to have production capacity, and you don't get production capacity without the commercial sector. If we have really good commercial capabilities, those commercial capabilities contribute to our integrated deterrence, which is really the foremost thing that we want to do. Is how do we prevent conflict? And you prevent conflict by impressing upon your would-be adversaries that we're something more to contend with, and that they have to figure out how to work around things, even our commercial capabilities. All right, so I've talked about a few things here. On the one of the things because I'm going to say a couple things here. There's more of my personal opinion, just having sat in the seat with DIU and this conference for a few years. On the front jacket and the rear jacket of our report, there's a caveat that these views don't necessarily reflect those of the DoD, the government, NASA, and all that stuff. We do that on purpose, and largely it's because these views are reflecting your views in aggregate. One of the areas, so I think we have a lot of work to do, is in the regulatory environment, and we've seen some really extraordinary things. I actually was quite pleased that the FAA gave the orbital test flight license to SpaceX to get that first launch and facilitate that learning this year. It was really fantastic, and their FAA is always on a lot of pressure. But FAA is the Federal Aviation Administration. You know, their advocacy is for aviation. Their public safety and all these things they have a very aviation focus, and they're not alone. I mean, the the other departments and agencies in the government have the same thing. And oftentimes when we engage on behalf of you, because we have contracts as the Department of Defense with you, they're always like, oh, well, we didn't know that this was important to you. Well, but you know, well, it is important, but we don't want necessarily some companies getting preferential treatment, others not doing it. And I don't think this is not the fault of those agencies. They were purpose-built for specific things. I know all of you have had different levels of experience with them, and be patient with them. They're good folks. But what we really, really need to start having a dialogue about is at some point in the future, do we really need a Department of Space? Do we need some sort of cabinet level advocacy that does the integration and synchronization piece across the whole of government, that does the long look, not just from a national security standpoint or from a science and technology standpoint, but from an economic standpoint, working, with commerce and others. And then, we created the Department of Homeland Security, like most everything's, in crisis. And then the government spent 10 years fixing the Department of Homeland Security. So I don't, that's not a good method. I think and I'm not an advocate that we do this tomorrow, but we need to have a dialogue. And I don't know, Robbie probably won't say anything to this, but my personal favorite, I like the Department of Energy. It's Department of Energy is like, it was very skillfully and purposely put together, and they do things across a whole continuum very well. But I think it's important that if we really believe in those future vision slides that not only General Olson, but the hybrid and the heterogeneous future that Robbie put up, and all the things that you're encountering every day, maybe it's time that we actually at least start talking about it and identifying, what the vision and the capabilities of something like that would be. So wrapping up, I covered a lot of areas, but the most important thing that we've been emphasizing 3 years running, this will probably be the 4th year, is a grand strategy for space that permeates all of society. And if you talk to most people out there, they're concerned about conflict. They're concerned about the economy. They're concerned about the climate. And the best thing about all the work that you folks do and the vision, our grand vision, is really that space is a great relief mechanism for planet Earth and all the humans that occupy it, right? So the resources are in abundance. But we have to be able to get to them, to harvest them, commoditize them, and use them. There are things in space that we can't replicate here on Earth: microgravity, high vacuum, other things. We'll probably find really good value out of just the radiation environment in the future for things. But it's really, really important that what we do is we have to take our message and not just the near term and the midterm strategies about what we're going to do to basically survive and get through the next decade or two, but how do we want the especially the United States and all of our allies? What's the space future? And we're going to hear a presentation about the space futures workshop. I think later today or tomorrow. But how do we facilitate that space future? That is something that we've had as a vision from day one of doing these workshops, and these meetings in our report are really the annual how goes it to achieving the space future that we all want and desire. And to do that effectively, we have to get everyone, not just the United States, but globally, really excited about the potential of what space has to offer. And then I think give people some perspective so they know how space really contributes to the climate and protection of our environment, and how space is going to tackle things like creating new economic opportunity, so that what percentage of our gross national product is going to be derived from space in the year 2040 or 2050. It's probably could be pretty significant. And how do we maintain a leadership role globally so that we can affect things like protect our values and promote democracy and maintain free and open markets? So think a little bit about your strategy, if you will, and make sure that you're incorporating your thoughts on all that in your responses that you provide today, because we really do need those. And I think it's great. And I'm going to wrap up there because I know we're going to have some fantastic speakers. But thank you all for what you do. Thank you for surviving COVID. That was amazing. Surviving some stumbles in the banking industry this year. That's been amazing. For those of you who aren't aware, Silicon Valley Bank, 65,000 startups banked with Silicon Valley Bank when they hit that crisis. 340 venture capital firms banked with Silicon Valley Bank. So if regardless of how you feel about that, you should say thank you to the administration for making sure that didn't turn into a really bad hair day, because a lot of the space capabilities would have been adversely impacted there. So securing our financial future, the best way we could do that is also something we need to chat about. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Casey, and sorry for running 10 minutes over.